Welcome to Center of Light Radio, Center of Divine Unfoldment and Reinforcement. Strap in all you brother and sister astronauts as we launch for inner space. Tonight we're going to go into some quantum healing. I have two very fine ladies from the East Coast, all the way in Boston, over there, where they parked the car. I was turned on to these two ladies by Mr. Gavin Lee Davies. Gavin. I have nothing nice to say about him at all. Gavin is a beautiful man. I love Gavin. Everyone, welcome to Center of Light Radio. It's been a while since I've done a radio interview, being the host, which I enjoy, but I've done it for so long, for so many years. I needed to take a break, and that break is still happening. But I like interviewing certain people that come across the opportunity platform, and Elise and Nancy happen to be such a two. We look around the world. Don't believe what you see. It's lying to you. It's telling you a story. It's only true for you if you buy into it. Are you buying into the beauty, or are you buying into the horror and the terror? It's really up to you. So what I suggest that you do, pause for a little bit. Just pause. Collect yourself. Collect your breath. Collect those you care about. Bring them into your fold as you allow them to bring you into theirs. And you make a nest, a beautiful family, friendship, loving nest to collect yourself. Because the world is about to get very, very loud. Very loud. So what do we do in such a situation? You don't do anything. That's the point. You don't join the noise. You don't do anything. Let the world get noisy. And you watch the movie. Lovingly, compassionately, caringly, you watch the movie. When it's your turn to step in, you'll know. You'll have no choice. Spirit will prompt you. Kick in your pants. Do something, and you go do something. And then when you've done your task and you contribute above and beyond, you step back for a little while, collect yourself, because what's coming down the pike is going to kick us all in the solar plexus. We're all going to need to collect our breaths. Mayhem like we never thought possible. That's the point of expansion of truth and awareness. Because if we're always here in the box, nothing exciting happens. You may be comfortable, but nothing exciting happens. So it takes these literal mind-shattering experiences to happen. Doesn't have to take that, but it's come to that. So what I suggest you do is you come to yourself and step into the game before it comes to you. You rise to the occasion, see what needs to be done, fill yourself with power. How do you do that? Look in the mirror, be your sexy, human, beautiful self. There's nothing else that is required of you. Nothing. Center of Light Radio tonight, my guest is Elise Brenner and Nancy Spates. I'll let her correct me. I like getting people's names right. The link to their brand new book is in the forum. Make sure you check that out. YouTube, I am going to post that link. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. The last link I posted, I believe, is not a good one. It's broken. I'll do that. Let me get these girls online so we can get down to some quantum healing. Let me tell you about my guest this evening on Center of Light Radio. Elise Brenner, PhD, is an associate professor in the Department of Public Health at Simmons University in Boston and is an instructor in the Department of Anthropology at Bridgewater State University in Bridgewater, Massachusetts. Brenner is a Reiki Master Practitioner and Teacher. Mindfulness Meditation Teacher is committed to wellness, equity, and all of the services she provides. The owner of Brenner Reiki Healing in Newton, Massachusetts, Elise provides comprehensive training on all levels of Reiki, having trained physicians, nurses, social workers, physical therapists, teachers, and people of all ages and backgrounds. Brenner has provided Reiki training for staff at Boston, Beth, Israel, Deaconess Medical Center staff, Edith, Nourse Rogers Veterans Administration Hospital in Bedford, Massachusetts, and Tufts Medical Center in Boston. Let me tell you about her partner in crime, Nancy, I'm going to say it's Spats. MD, Reiki Master Teacher, graduated from Boston University School of Medicine in 1990s. All these academics. Nancy's training continued at Beth Israel Hospital. I bet that's where they met. Harvard Medical School, where she completed her psychiatric psychiatry training in 1994. After witnessing the ongoing hardships that people experience with medical and emotional illness, all derives from thinking to emotions to in the obvious world of the physical. So we have to become aware, intuitive of where the imbalance is along these subtler levels, because it will manifest in the world of the obvious, physical, where we have no choice but to ignore and or deny it. Nancy found that the combination of her medical knowledge and Reiki practice helped people calm their mind, settle their body, and heal. Nancy's care for others became the impetus, excuse me, to get the word out so all of us can experience the benefits of Reiki self-practice. Ladies, welcome to Center of Light.
Thanks, Keith. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
You're welcome. Hello, Nancy.
Hello, thank you. And it is Beth, so you were right.
Girls, right out of the gate, do you have a website? Though the link to your book are in these forums, is there a website they can go to learn not only to purchase your book, but to actually engage with you about some of the services you provide? Please give that out now.
Yes, it's www.reikiliveandpeace.com.
Fantastic. So let me start with Elise. Elise, when did you start to get your spiritual, do something with yourself and to help others groove on? Was this innate in you when you was a child, you knew something was different? Or for like many of us, did it require a very painful step to throw you into the spin of wanting to become illumined?
That is such an interesting question, because I think for me it might be a little of each. I haven't given this much thought, but I do remember as a child thinking that everybody does what I do, which is just like take off walking or on my bike and kind of be an observer of self and others. And I just thought that's what everybody did. It wasn't until much later that it turns out that maybe that is not what everybody does. But about 22 years ago, I just had a personal experience of a spiritual nature, which, like you kind of said, gave me the push. And once that happened, to be honest with you, I kept hearing about this thing, Reiki. It was like everywhere. And so I said yes. And I had already been very interested in cross-cultural healing patterns and practices from anthropology, and kind of like it all fit together, and I bring it into my public health teaching as well. My whole self's in it.
What about you, Nancy?
So it's really interesting, but I feel that I was very fortunate because my dad and my grandmother really seemed to be teaching the Reiki principles. I didn't know that at the time, but you know, I just sort of grew up with that very helpful and compassionate attitude. And as I got older, it, you know, just always stayed with me. And as you read, just seeing and experiencing hardships, it really made me just sort of search out other adjunct therapies that people could help themselves heal. And I found Reiki because a friend of mine was actually going to have a Reiki treatment, and that's how it all began. And what I'm referring to about these principles that I was taught was the first two are: do not live in anger, do not live in worry, be gracious, be true to your way in being, and be compassionate to self and others. I would say I really experienced a lot of the compassionate to others from people that, helped me grow up. So I would say that it was from a child that I saw these experiences. I just didn't know that it was Reiki, but that's what it was. So.
This just popped into my head, and it seems so, but I'd rather ask the experts. Though I may claim I'm an expert in many fields, this is not one. My thought is, my question to either of you or both, someone who is a practitioner of Reiki or a healing device of a sort, be it Hands of Light, Barbara Brennan kind of thing, but would you say that, would it be fair to say that people who practice this spiritual technology, that they're empathic? Or do you have to be empathic when you say so to be in this field?
I would suggest that we're ordinary people who don't judge ourselves as being one thing or another, and that every single person has the capacity to be a healing presence and bring healing or facilitate healing for others. There are no requirements, there's no prerequisites. It becomes a way of being, a state of being for self and others in the world.
Nancy?
Can you repeat the question?
No worries. The question is, my thought is, being in Reiki, a generator of energy or a conduit, whatever word makes the most sense to anyone, but holding space for someone, but also using your intent of becoming a vessel to allow the loving energy of the universe or God or whatever it is to move through into that person. Just as one is a giver, do you think there is a reciprocal? I mean, because if we think about it, if we look at the Hands of Light, even in your craft, we're digging in their auric field. I mean, we're messing around with their energies. So somehow we are receiving as to why, or is there, in other words, do you both freelance how you do certain motion, or is everything you do on a person in the form of healing, those who are new to the idea of Reiki, like you might see in this photo, is it freestyle, or is there a particular routine that you do to open and close and those kinds of things?
So I will, to answer your question, Reiki is a system, sort of, that it's multidimensional. So there are precepts or principles that I mentioned earlier. There are meditations, and then there's hands-on and hands-off healing. And they all have the commonality that when we're practicing our different practices, we settle down the nervous system. So we bring on the parasympathetic nervous system, which allows us to settle our mind, calm our body, and feel more relaxed and set up a system for healing. So basically, what it is that when we practice, we set up the dynamic for our body to feel relaxed and have the sort of be true to our way in being. And so we're really not doing anything. We're just bringing about our true self, that when you get rid of the anger and you get rid of the worry, and your graciousness and your compassion comes through just by being Reiki, we can then help other people, because it's all about being true to yourself and healing yourself, and then how you present yourself in the world. So I watched one of your YouTube videos, and you talked about your, being true to yourself and feeling comfortable. And so I think it's more that we don't really do anything. We're just sort of sharing our compassion with other people, which then allows them to feel more compassionate. But Elise, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I might like to add, Nancy, that in a clinical setting where
Right.
you're offering Reiki sessions to clients who are paying,
Right.
you're entering into a therapeutic alliance similar to any other helping profession. So you open your ears and you listen to the life story and the life world, the unbeautiful parts of the person's life and the hurts of the person's life. And then I like to say, well, in this space, let's set aside, quote, dysfunction, and let's have a little talk first about what it is that you would like to fuel, F-U-E-L, fuel in your life. And then that becomes the opening invitation for that person to set the intent that they're really healing themselves. Exactly. With us as standing by, facilitating, because gentle touch does bring some huge benefits to mind and body.
This is amazing because I often talk about something I do. I'm a professional musician, so I've been playing music out social butterflying for years. And being this spiritual guy, I always try to develop my inner self, my craft, and levels of empathy, compassion, caring, all those wonderful things. And what you just described, Elise, is exactly what I do, said differently with a little different in structure. I'm out and I go to a table of my friends because I want to say hello to everyone and thank you for coming and supporting the band, right? Keith, we told this friend about your band. His name is John Doe. Hey, John Doe, how are you doing? My name's Keith Blanchard. Nice to meet you. So what do you do, John Doe? So John Doe begins his spiel, right? So what I begin to do is not only hold space and look at the unbeautiful, not beautiful things that you described, Elise. I don't even see that. I find something that is truly attractive to me, be it their physical beauty, guy or girl, phenomenal voice, a really cool dialect. They're wearing something on their neck that really has my attention. And I begin to massage that aspect and that quality of that person. Yeah. And I literally see God, if that's an applicable word for those, step out of the person right before my face. So, like you said, it's not really me that's doing it. And it's just in my looking for it, I allow them to be heard and attended to. And they feel comfortable and trusting, and they truly let that God aspect of themselves out. Does that sound like the same thing you just described?
Yes, 100%. If you have big ears and big eyes, and you really expand, enlarge your sense of that person, they enlarge to meet that, if you will. I actually love the way you put that, and that's your own direct experience. So that's not your intellectual cognitive understanding, so when it's the direct experience, now that has some real, healing power behind it, doesn't it?
Yeah, because your level of conviction, oh my God, I just did something and it had a huge impact. It doesn't matter if it impacted them, it impacted me by what I just saw. And then the level of graduation between giver and receiver begins this synergy dance of I see you, you see me, and the you and me sort of get lost and the we becomes one. My initial understanding, though you have a list of questions, this is somewhat applies to me. That's why I'm asking it for sure. My initial understanding of Reiki was that that is practiced by a practitioner, sort of like this for everyone in the audience, with someone laying down on a table. Your title of your book is Reiki, a self-practice to live in peace with self and others. Can you please clarify this in terms of my understanding?
Yes, and I'm sorry to weigh
about
in again.
What is the Reiki practice?
I'm sorry to weigh in again, but we kind of divvied up some of the questions that we had, worked on before. So, Let's just say it this way. There are many practices that are practitioner directed only. As in, someone lies on a table, sits in a chair, lies on the floor, stands up, and a practitioner is directing, managing, controlling, however you want to look at that. We can say practitioner directed. And then there are lots of practices that are self-directed. Like mindfulness meditation you could do on your own. You don't need to have it directed by a specialist unless you're learning it. Reiki has both wings. It's like a bird. It has two wings, practitioner directed and self-directed. Now, when Reiki was developed in Japan by Sensei Usui, it really began as cultivating the terrain within yourself. It began as self. And only was really others kind of, maybe like a frosting on the cake. But because there is, as you just said, when it comes down to it, there's no I and there's no you. There's no othering. So that which I practice is, as Nancy was saying, is simply offered out. The way you practice your music and then you offer it. So self-practice, whether it's contemplating and embodying the precepts and rehearsing, your ordinary life and how you will refine your speech to not fuel anger, not fuel worry, etc. So like when a client comes to see me, we sit together and we do hara breathing, one of the essential Reiki breathing practice. And if I think one of the Reiki precepts might be really helpful for that person, that's their homework. And there will be lying on the table too. But I also then have them place their own hands on themselves so they feel that connection with themselves. So we really like to be very generous with the teachings and not have it be, as you call, it's not a one-way street. And that is the way it's practiced in Japan. And I think in the cultural context of the US, things get shifted about a bit with a little bit more doing and maybe a little bit less being. Yes.
In your ladies' book, you make an analogy that Reiki is like a palm tree. I'm excited about hearing this answer.
Okay, great. So when Elise mentioned the hara breathing, and so when you take a hara breath is when you take a refreshing breath in, and you breathe in down to your lower belly, about 2 inches below the navel, and it's midline. And then when you breathe out, you have a longer extended out breath. And we can all do it for a second if we want. Take a deep breath in, and then a breath out. So this relates to the palm tree analogy, because when we look at a palm tree in a storm and you see the top of the palm tree is blowing and scattered and it looks like it's going to fall over. But then when you look down to the base of the palm tree, it's steady and stable. And what the analogy is that when we take those hara breaths, we can steady and stable ourselves like a palm tree in a storm.
That's phenomenal. There's this one thing I say that be like a palm tree.
We cannot hear you, Keith.
One thing I say is be like a palm tree, because a palm tree, it sways for the purpose of, if it wasn't flexible, it will break. Same with high-rise buildings. Same with bridges. they're flexible so they can bend in the wind. They can shift. They're not so rigid and hard to where when a situation comes along, they simply break. But even though they sway, they're swaying in a state of balance. There's a natural sway. So just because things are swaying, it doesn't mean that the root is not solid. There is a continuity there as to why a rope bridge may sway back and forth, because anything out of alignment is going to break. So that's fantastic. So how does this also liken to a snow globe?
Well, I actually have a snow globe. We both have a snow globe. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we bring these, I bring these when I do my outreach workshops, Reiki workshops, in places that could use a practice. So when we shake up the snow globe, we can't really see the scene very clearly. It's all biased. But when the snow begins to settle down, settles all the way down, we can see the scene in the snow globe perfectly clearly. And so that has to do with the human being. When our minds are spiraling out and full of snow, we're not seeing clearly at all. We're jumping to conclusions where our conditionings and our reactive habits are overtaking us. But when we begin to untangle the knots of the mind and allow the mind to settle down and down into the hara, lower belly, we gain clarity, creativity, and we can just move through our situations with a lot greater ease. So be like the snow globe and settle.
This is very analogous to what's happening in 2022. 2022, well, ongoingly from now on, is this snow globe being shaken effect, because right now the pot is excited. There's lots of ingredients floating around, right? And so if we're looking at the foreground of the shaken snow globe, likewise 2022, and all the stuff that's just bouncing around randomly without any sense of order, it's exactly what we're going to see. We have to sit back enough for things to settle so we can see clearly, like you were saying, Elise. Fantastic. What are your thoughts about that, Miss Nancy?
Well, I agree with what you both said, and that it's so important to settle yourself so that you can see clearly. And when we say seeing clearly, we also mean what we say and what we do. So the more settled we are as the snow settles in a snow globe, the more likely we are to be able to think clearly, speak clearly, and understand our own emotions. So, yeah.
So one further analogy, how is it like compared to a compass? I can kind of extrapolate or come up with a few ideas, but I'd rather hear it from you.
Sure. So we talk about the precepts as being like a compass because they give us a direction to follow and to work on. And it sometimes takes years to work on the different precepts, but depending on, what you're feeling when you check in with yourself, then you can try to figure out day to day which precept you want to think about. And even though it may take years to figure, to be in touch with yourself with the precepts, you can work on them slowly and every bit sort of adds together. So in our book, we actually give different ways in which to we say contemplate or think about which precepts. So, for example, if you're feeling very anxious one day and you don't want to live in anxiety for that day, you can think about what you could do to help relieve the anxiety and what's causing it, and then what your reaction is to it or what it could be to it.
I'd love to just underline and highlight and add on, Nancy. And the first precept, just for today, I like to translate it this way: I do not fuel anger. And the second one, just for today, I do not fuel worry. And you can kind of put in parentheses, anger, worry, fear. They're kind of like a nice little package. Well, in order not to fuel anger and worry and fear, well, don't I first have to be familiar enough with myself and self-aware to notice that anger is arising, that worry is arising, that fear is arising in me? So it's a call to embody self-awareness. And then when we notice that we can feel the anger in the body, we start to notice that, like, the signs and signals and symptoms within our own bodies, that worry is gripping us and fear is gripping us. Then once we've noticed it, and we know those sensations, we can pause, take a pause, and we have a choice. We don't have to fuel that anger, that worry. We don't have to fuel it. We can feel it, we can touch it, we can sense it, and then we can try to shift out of the habitual, reactive, conditioned ways that we might have reacted before. And so the goal is to really embody the precepts in everyday life. And sometimes it's the hardest with the people that are closest to us, You think? So this is really getting, this is getting real, and the proof is in the pudding. It's, as Nancy said, your speech, your behavior. Can you act out of thankfulness and gratitude and integrity? And sometimes we should be angry, so we need to use our discernment. I'm angry about social injustice.
Well, there's a huge difference between anger and conscious anger. I am conscious and I'm letting you know, you son of a bitch, you piss me off, versus just reactionary. There's a purpose for anger for me, because I came from that labyrinth, that hellhole. And when I realized that, save you power, Keith, save you power, for a time that you need your conscious anger to deliver a nice blow to help the situation, really, because I'm using this. Don't let my volume fool you to think I'm unconscious. My volume, naturally, when we speak to someone we don't know their language, we tend to speak louder thinking they're going to hear us a little better. But I understand there's a huge difference between anger and conscious power. And sometimes venting can look like anger, swearing and punching into a pillow. But I totally understand. And I think what you described is that's the sort of like the spiritual development of a lot of people. Catching yourself when you go unconscious. Whoa, I know what that feeling's like, and I know what's coming. So this is what they were trying to tell me. And we begin to work on, refine the machine until we get better and better. Yeah, fantastic. So
that's exactly it. Mm-hmm.
So your title of the book includes Live in Peace with Self and Others, but sometimes in this redonkulous, loud, noisy world. Is that actually possible?
Well, but can we just say before, Nancy, if you want, your everyday life is your practice. This is the world. This is the material world. And for better or worse, we are accountable in it, to it. But the question is, from what state of being will you do that? Why not encourage, invite, and cultivate a state of being of peace, right? Why not? It's easier. So, yeah.
And, you know, the more peaceful we are with ourselves, the more, and that's why the practices come in so helpful, because the more peaceful we are with ourselves, then the more peaceful we can be with others. And that is really where we're going to with the title of the book. And, you know, that's our hope, that we can be peaceful with ourselves and therefore then others.
Yeah, and Nancy, right? It's a challenge. It's challenging, and I will fail numerous times in a day, and we don't judge. You know, who are we to judge when people are bouncing around and just simply really doing their best? And yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Has your book been released yet? Has your book been released yet?
January 28th.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling about that?
Party time.
Fantastic.
Party.
So this is singularly but collectively your first book?
Collectively and singularly.
Mm-hmm.
Have you received the infamous on your door yet to give you your first few books?
We have our books, a couple of books.
Oh, that's right. You showed me. So my reason for asking this question is, when you heard on the door and you knew what it was, how did it make you feel when they handed you the package? But also when you got that butter knife out of the drawer and you cut that tape and you opened that box and you saw your child come out of your cosmic womb. How did that make you feel?
I felt so relieved, because I really, I just think that it can be very helpful with life. And right now, as you mentioned, Keith, things are so chaotic. So I just felt so relieved that, you know, our thought in writing the book was to help as many people as we possibly could. And that's why we wanted to have it in a book, so that everyone could have access to it, because some people don't have access to, you know, Reiki practitioners, especially now with everything going on. It's there's so much isolation. So, you know, I just felt this huge sense of relief. And then when I heard that it was postponed because of the pandemic, I was like, oh, I wish we could get it out sooner. But being patient, you know, now okay, we're still going through this. So I'm just hoping that people will be able to take something from it and feel peace within themselves, even during these chaotic times, so then they can feel more peaceful towards other, and also the healing part of it. But the healing part of it is that when we talk about healing in Reiki, we talk about feeling whole. And to me, that was sort of my passion about Reiki, because while everyone goes through so many different things, be it physical or emotional, you can sometimes feel like you're just dispersed and that you're, you know, not whole or healed. So while Reiki isn't curative, sometimes, like medicine, it can be curative or not curative, but Reiki, you can still feel yourself being whole or healed despite what other things are going on in your life. So back to my feeling of, relief. I hope some people can feel this way despite what they're going through.
Fantastic. What about you, Elise? How did you
I
feel
have
when
to
you
go with
cracked
the
open those books?
widening. First of all, of course, when I saw it, I was like, cherish. Co-authoring is such a magical process. You don't know it until you've done it. I can't describe it. It's magical. So, like the birthing. But also,
can you show us the cover while you speak to us? Can you show it? Come closer. There you go. There you go.
Are you sure you can see it?
Back up a little bit. There you go. Fantastic. There you go.
I don't know.
It's a little easier for Nancy to show because she can see.
Okay, I'll let Nancy do the work while I.
She's like one of those Prices Right girls.
Yeah.
You look great. See, you have a future in Price is Right.
Very similar to what Nancy said. There's like an expanding of possibility. So if you have one person on a Reiki table, you reach one person, and maybe through their healing, they reach a few people too. When I do outreach workshops with like survivors of intimate partner violence or veterans, I do workshops with mind-body practices based in Reiki. And they have a circle of 20 people, right? Maybe a little bit more. But with a book, cue Nancy, with a book, it just is, it could be thousands of people who can avail themselves of self-Reiki practice. So it's just like the circle widens and widens and widens. And that's really the point.
How long did it take you both to complete? Once you guys sat down over coffee at Starbucks, or if that's your thing, and hey, let's write a book. Sure, let's get together Sunday, and to when you actually sent it off. And how long was this process for you?
It was about 2 years. We just really enjoyed the process, and we were just very careful with every word.
Yeah, you can say that sometimes we would be like 15 or 20 minutes on one word.
Yeah.
I hear you. I had an editor. She called herself a with writer, which means she's with you after you've done all the work and you go back through it in editing. She starts grabbing your text and trashing it. I'm going, and she goes, Keith, you have another copy? I said, yes, ma'am. She goes, don't worry about it. And she pulled out all the extraneous stuff and left the juice. She reduced 3 pages into a page and a half, this tight and compressed. She goes, read it. She goes, I didn't do anything. I just grabbed your text and moved it in this chronological order where there was this cadence, this delivery. And she was just amazing. So I know what it's like to have someone with you and spending time on your craft, on your baby, because, I don't want to just, like my editor, Stella, said, she goes, if you say something once or twice very powerfully, it's not necessary to repeat it. So we spent time. So I understand that, the preciousness and the integrity about your work. So what is the meaning of Reiki, and how did it originate? I thought I heard you say it was Japanese. Yeah.
The word Reiki is composed of 2 Japanese characters, 2 Japanese kanji. And in the time of Sensei Usui, the man who developed the system of Reiki, it meant soul energy or sacred energy or spiritual energy. And this man was born in the 1860s and died in the 1920s. But he himself, Sensei Usui, was a lay Buddhist priest. And he was a very learned man, and he based the system of Reiki and all of its teachings and practices on what he knew best: Shintoism, which is the original, quote, religion of Japan, Buddhism, and Taoism. And so the roots of the system of Reiki are deeply in Shintoism and Buddhism and Taoism.
So what does Reiki mean? Does it mean like karate means open hand? What does Reiki mean? I'm sure ki might be related as to why we call it chi or prana. Would that be right?
That Reiki means spiritual energy or soul energy or spiritual energy. It's the energy that animates all life, the energy that moves through all things. And the system of Reiki is a system. Reiki is not a system. It is what it is, right? The system of Reiki is a healing and meditation practice from Japan to promote mindfulness, well-being, resilience, and love and compassion.
Well, looking at this picture, everything's backwards for me. So looking at this picture, what is all of this? It's been so long since I've had some levels of Reiki learning, but I heard that there was like, for example, if you look at my spiritual name here, this light language, that Reiki consists of, and you turn your hands in the form of these sacred geometric shapes. Is there any truth? It's just been so long. What's happening in the actual practicing of the hands of Reiki?
In our practice, in traditional Japanese Reiki practice, as Nancy explained a little bit, right? We sit, if it is hands versus meditations, of which there are a series of Japanese meditations in the system of Reiki. But if you're interested in the hands-on or off healing, it is simply to get the practitioner's, you might say, self-importance out of the way and simply be 100% with the recipient. But like we said, you get to this point, no giver, no receiver, as our teacher likes to put it. Because if I touch you, you are touching me. It's mutual. We're engaged. So the picture is, I can't say I'm a big fan of that picture of some, beautiful white woman lying down and look like a spa setting with these magical hands above. We have no magic wand. We are all able to heal with our hands. Reiki practice is just one avenue toward reconnecting or rediscovering that quality or that capacity that's inherent in the human being. Because
so it sounds to me, forgive me, I don't mean it in any way but curiosity, that all this Reiki learning ultimately takes you to really doing nothing at all except being present. Unlearning.
Fantastic. Yes. And simply being. A lot less doing, a lot less mind energy, and a lot more beingness energy.
So would it be true that most beginner Reiki practitioners start with this stuff and they get the feel of that, and eventually they sort of pull out of this habitual mainstream way of doing things? And like we all talked about a little earlier, the real essence of who you are begins to insert itself into the game. Would that be true?
The real essence of of embodying the precepts, I would say, comes to the fore. And yes, the things like a hand placement protocol for practice with self or others, it's very reassuring. It's a guideline, and it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. And if you want to see it as, training wheels until you can move independently, so to speak, fine. But if you want to keep with that reassuring protocol, I think that's terrific too. People grow, and as long as you're growing and giving, does it really matter the exact mechanics?
And I'm sure this changes with every client, every situation, every group. Some people, the whole group might need to be touched. Everybody needs a damn hug. And some might just need to be energetically just attended to and holding space and loving and caring, even in their unbeautiful ways, which is the truth of it is, in hindsight, it is a beautiful way, because all of my nasty spiritual mess early in my life, it was messy and ugly then. But in hindsight, it's the most beautiful thing that ever happened to me.
Sometimes the pain, the suffering, the distress is the biggest teacher, I think what you're saying. If we can learn and if we can move with it. And most of us need support for that. I don't know how you did it.
I had no choice. I was already down, couldn't go any further. Yeah. But it's also part of my spiritual lineage. I don't mean it any other way, but to tell you, it's part of my spiritual lineage. And the reason I am here doing what I do is to have woken up. Age 15, I was going to be a Catholic priest. Until my father puts an electric guitar in my hands. God goes in the closet, the guitar stays out until the guitar is what got me in trouble. The girlfriends, the lifestyle, all this stuff, The girl I was with 10 years left. I had nothing. Put the guitar in the closet. Well, I didn't, but metaphorically I put it in the closet and I pulled God out and I got on my knees and I said, I need you. I need to hear your voice, whoever you are, whatever you look like, even if you don't look like anything. And I did something correctly in the shape of some formula that cracked open the door to the universe, and I was answered, literally answered. I do know what that formula is. It's passion. I had a lot of fire in my belly. I need to hear your voice. I ain't joking around anymore. My sincerity, which was number 2, which is I need to hear your voice. I meant it. I was sincere about it. It was that soft side of the coin of passion. Passion is the fire. Get in there and do it. And sincerity is, I need help. Humility and vulnerability. And somehow I put this all together in my asking for 3 weeks. This fervent prayer. And it cracked open. It cracked me open, basically. But that's what did it for me. Nancy, what about you, dear? When you do your Reiki, do you both practice in the same sort of way? In other words, do you mirror each other? Like, you're not so hands-on as you were in your earlier years as well?
Well, I think we do mirror each other because we follow this system. And the thing about it is that when you do these practices, it allows your parasympathetic nervous system or your nervous system to relax. So whether we're doing hands-on, which has been tough these days, or the precepts, or I would say hands-on healing for others, which has been tough these days, given the situation in the world. But whether we're doing hands-on healing ourselves or we're thinking about contemplating the precepts, we're bringing our nervous system down. So I would say yes. We may have little different ways in which we do it, but the sort of overall picture is that we're relying on our nervous system to calm ourselves down, and then, as we've talked about, present ourselves, feel better about ourselves, and then other people also feel that way. So No. Yeah, I just think so. I do think we do similar because our training is we follow the system, so it is similar.
And to say that when we follow the system, it's really as traditional Japanese and non-Western or non-New Age as possible, but still in a clinical setting where you might be offering Reiki practice with clients, people, patients. We still do hands on the body. Just hands are perfectly still on the body for 5 or 10 minutes there, and then maybe gently moving to another spot, another hand placement on the body for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and just basically stay and be. And when it looks like nothing is happening, right, Nancy, everything is happening. And that's the invisible, empowering piece of it. People always feel that healing, wholeness, more intactness benefit. And it can do no harm. And it pretty much 99.99% of the time, you know, people experience a benefit, even the most skeptical people. Because it's a human thing. It's simple.
I love that you say that. There's a quote in a movie. The movie is The Peaceful Warrior with Dan Millman, and Nick Nolte plays Socrates, and he is somewhat of an avatar, a divine illumined man in many ways, and he grabs the young guy, Dan Millman, and he says, "There's never nothing not happening. There's never nothing not happening. Listen." And then he has this hyper expanded sense of awareness, and he hears people talking from across the park and so forth. Ladies, thank you for joining me at Center of Light Radio. Would one of you give us more context of how you would like to advertise yourself so our audience can find more about you and what you do in your services? And then on top of that, after that, I would like to hear a closing thought from each of you.
Lovely. Well, let's run through it. The book has its own Facebook page, Reiki Live in Peace. I have a Facebook page, my name, Elise Brenner. My business, Brenner Reiki Healing, has its own Facebook page. Okay. The book has its own website, ReikiLiveInPeace.com. I have my own website, BrennerReikiHealing.org. Nancy, your turn.
I love it. Go, girl.
So we also have an Instagram, which is Reiki Live in Peace, which is one word. So you can follow us there. And yeah, I think Elise, you summed it up. Yeah, you got everything.
Good.
You got it.
Yeah.
So, but I was just going to say, in closing, I'm very appreciative, Keith, for you and your audience to have us, and I hope that it has been helpful. And it's just, I just am very appreciative to all our teachers and everyone who has helped us get the word out. So thank you so much.
I have a forum. Get on Facebook and look up Center of Light. In fact, it's facebook.com/group anyway, Center of Light. I think I've invited both of you. That forum is yours. Feel free to post your love, your events, your upcoming situations that you want people. It's yours. Just do what you need to do. Elise, do you have a closing comment, dear?
Yes, thank you. I think this was a precious hour that I will always remember, and I will absolutely always be connected with you, Keith.
Yeah, that's impossible to undo. You can't untie that knot.
And my final thought relating to the Reiki practice is that Reiki practice brings with it like a self-responsibility for anti-racism, for anti-oppression, for repairing the world, because as Sensei Usui said, the universe is in me and I am in the universe, this participation consciousness, this non-dual consciousness of you and all beings, requires that we work for social justice. Chapter 10.
I enjoyed my time with you, ladies.
Thank you
Please
so
keep
much.
me informed.
Thank
You're
you
welcome
so
back
much.
anytime. Let me know if you have a special event or a new book coming out. I know we got to start with book number 1, but congratulations on your co-endeavor. I think it's beautiful that, we can all create something individually, but I think when we co-create, kind of helps us to amalgamate, to integrate being with others, to where the two hearts become one. And in your case, it looks like a book called Reiki, a practice. I appreciate
love your
you both.
vocabulary and language.
know.
Thank you. What a gift.
That was Stella. I
Thank
failed
you.
English 4 times and typing twice. The tools you need to write a book. And she taught me something. And I learned how to tap into the English language. Her love for the English language made me love it. And so, thank you, ladies. I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank
Welcome
you.
to Center of Light Radio. Everyone, Keith Anthony Blanchard here. Good to see you tonight. Center of Light Radio, hanging out with Elise and Nancy. And we're all doing the same thing. I do something different, so it looks like, but it's not. It's the same thing with a little different spin. Vice versa. This is how we all win. We are all uniquely the same. Get into the game. What game is that? Get out of the game of life. Find yourself. Look in the mirror. There's nothing that has been more beautifully created, can be created now or ever, as beautiful as you. When you see that, you live in Reiki. You live in yourself. You live in the universe consciously. The universe wants nothing from you except for you to fire off and illuminate your authentic self. How do you know when you're in your authenticity? You can't stop smiling. You can't stop laughing. You can't stop crying because you're overwhelmed with utter bliss and joy. Well, no, there's no way you cannot. Love you beyond measure. Peace, love, and light.